Good evening and welcome to the quarterfinal round edition of Inside the 605. I'm David Brown. That is Jason Andera. Thursday night, Halloween, we have 28 high school football games, and it will eliminate half the teams left. It's one of the best times of the year. We're in the nitty-gritty, all 7 classes in the quarterfinal round of the playoffs.
We are getting down to it, and that first round is always interesting. We had a few upsets, which was nice, more than usual. I hope that's predictive of things to come because it makes it for a lot more interesting following along with high school football when you get some stuff that you don't expect. So there you go.
Absolutely. And you at home can make those upset picks if you want. Remember, 605sports.com. Fill out your brackets. You have until 5 o'clock Central tomorrow, Halloween, to get in your picks.
I think there's some games that... Oh, no, you're right. We've got a 3 o'clock start in Del Rapids, but that's for the 9-man. So, yes. Yeah, you're right. You got till 5.
Yes, because if you did all the other 4 brackets, you've already made your picks for this round, but for 11A, AA, and AAA. 5 o'clock tomorrow to make all your picks. Again, 605sports.com. Leaderboard is up there. I am just off the leaderboard. I'm not at the top, but I'm kind of right below the initial bunch of leaders.
Yes.
Not to brag, but...
Yes. So there's 3 people at the top. J.H., H. Bodie, and Jackson Eisman, all with 87, which means they got 3 wrong. And then there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tied with 4 wrong. And you're right behind those people with 5 wrong. I got 6 wrong.
We're so close. So close.
Still got time to catch up.
We still have time to catch up. We got a lot to go through, though, of course, because now everyone's in the quarterfinal round. So let us start, as always, with brownie points. Brownie point number 1. Let's flash back to the end of the regular season. Sioux Falls, Lincoln. It was the big matchup against Harrisburg. They win at Harrisburg 27-17. That ensures that a potential semifinal game will be at Howard Wood Field. 20 unanswered points in the second half for the Patriots on the road.
That was a impressive performance, especially in the second half when Lincoln came back from a deficit, put the defense on show in that game, and found a way to get the victory on the road against Harrisburg. I think a very important statement made by the Patriots that says, hey, we've still only lost 1 game in the last 2 years. We're still pretty good.
They trailed 17-7 at halftime, 27-17 final. As you mentioned, the defense stepped up. They limited Sam Knuth in that second half. And then Brody Schaefer did it with both his arm and his legs.
Yeah, Brody Schaefer, he had a great start to his sophomore season this year. And then the Brandon game really set him back a little bit, but he has come back full force. And he really was the reason to me that Lincoln did so well in that game. He took the team on his shoulders. And if he can do that, there's no stopping these Patriots. They're going to be really tough to beat.
Absolutely. And again, we're not trying to project anything necessarily, but as the number 2 seed, Lincoln would, in theory, host a rematch against Harrisburg next week should both teams win on Halloween.
And that seems pretty likely right now. 11 AAA, we've had those top 4 teams really delineated from the bottom 4 teams. If that holds up, you're right. That's a very important win for Lincoln.
All right, brownie point number 2. Let's talk about 11. Not from Stranger Things, but the 11 seeds. St. Thomas More over Groton in 11B. Hanson over Tripp, Delmont Armor, Andy Central Dakota Christian in 9AA. Let's start with the 11B matchup, 40-13. You and I talked about the Cavaliers last week. They had pitched something like 5 consecutive shutouts. They had won 6 games in a row, and they got out to a 27-0 lead and really never looked back.
And we've been talking about their defense, but their offense has been really sharp lately, too. They've really started to get things together. And you combine both sides of the ball like that, a nice win against a good opponent in Groton area, and they've got a lot of confidence right now, going, 7 wins in a row as they head into the next round.
Absolutely. Dawson Inhofer had a couple of long touchdown runs. They mixed in the pass as well, and we mentioned the defense, and now what this sets up is a rematch with Mount Vernon Plankington. That was the last team they lost to in the regular season when they started 0-2.
Exactly. Seems like forever ago, but it was just a 6-point game back then. And you look at how much St. Thomas More has improved since then, and Mount Vernon, we'll talk about this more when we get to the 11B playoffs, but Mount Vernon Plankington has had some really good moments this year, but last week they barely got out of the first round going against Gannon Knable, and both teams kind of on a crash course here going different directions.
Absolutely. So that's one 11 seed. The other 11 seed, Hanson, 27-26 over TDA AC/DC. Defense held strong late in that game when TDA AC/DC had a chance to get the win. The defense steps up for the Beavers.
Yeah, the defense came to play, and they've played one of the tougher schedules, and you saw it right there. They were able to play a really good game, despite having a struggle in that game. They were able to play a really good game defensively, and I think the toughness of their schedule really showed through, being able to beat a really quality team in the first round like that.
And then you look at Eston Schlimgen, 239 yards, 4 touchdowns at quarterback. We had talked about how Hanson always plays a difficult schedule every single season. So they came in at, 4-4? They were a 500 team this season. But come playoff time, this is a battle-tested group.
It is, and I'll tell you what, they threw the ball a little bit more than they had in the past. And Eston Schlimgen, I think he threw 4 touchdown passes in that game. And that's something that we haven't seen from Hanson yet so far this year. So they're even adding another element on top of what they've done this year with the running game. So congratulations to the Beavers, and march on and see what they can do against Elkton Lake Benton now.
Absolutely. Congrats to Hanson and to St. Thomas More, our 2 11-seed winners. Final brownie point. No, we didn't forget about you. It's you, me, and Dupree. Congratulations to Dupree. 12 over a 5. That's usually reserved for the NCAA basketball tournament. But here, 50-28 over Harding County Bison, number 5 team. First win over Harding County Bison since 1987. Trivia question. Was I alive in 1987?
Yes.
Yes, I was 1 year old.
Yes.
So there you go. It was almost a trick question, but
I knew it.
To be fair, it has been a long, long time. Ryan Deal wrote a great article about it at 605sports.com. So if you haven't seen that, please check it out. But congratulations to Dupree, not just getting a playoff win, but getting a win over a historic rival for the first time in a generation.
And we're going to talk about Dupree a few times during the show now, and then Ryan Deal will talk about it in the Real Deal segment, and then I'm sure we'll get a few cents in during the 9A segment, but a huge win, and this is what that first round of playoffs, like I said, we don't see a lot of upsets, but when you see one like this, it shows that these teams can change gears and improve as the season goes on. They played earlier in the year against Hill City, didn't play well. They played against Harding County earlier in the season, didn't play well enough to win, even though they feel like they made a few mistakes. But they can change and improve throughout the season, and that's why we play all the way through November.
First playoff win of any kind for Dupree since 2011. So it's been 13 years since they even won a playoff game, and they did it on the ground. 447 rushing yards.
That's unbelievable. And, you can bet there's going to be a top performer from that list coming up here very soon on my Game Changers list.
And why don't we just get to that right now?
Let's
as long as we're talking about it. I won't spoil it this time because that man from Dupree will certainly be among your top performers, along with a bunch of other fantastic individual performances.
Let's take a look at the list as we see the Game Changers for one last time this year. We'll start with the 11-man Game Changers, and we have a pair of teammates in Sioux Valley who rushed for over 400 yards between the two of them. Brock Christofferson did a very efficient job of going over 200 yards with 2 touchdowns, and Donovan Rose, another 200-yard game for him. Sioux Valley looking pretty good against the Dual Cardinals.
47-26 is your final score, and as you said, look at how balanced that is. We talk about Rose a lot, but 205 and 203 literally cannot get more balanced except for 1 yard.
Exactly. Brock Christofferson's been doing it all season long as well. Let's take a look at EPJ. We were wondering how they would do against Flandreau. Well, their 2 big guns got it done, and they did it through the air. Keaton Gale for a 374-yard passing game for EPJ. And Ashton Fairbanks, he was the recipient of a lot of those yards. 232 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns. Way to go, Ashton.
It helps when you average almost 50 yards per reception, but the rematch with Flandreau, which was close in the regular season, 44-14, Elk Point Jefferson.
Huge win for them. And now let's take a look at a trio of teammates from the Brookings Bobcats as they got it done with Gavin Anderson, very efficient through the air for 255 yards and 3 touchdowns. How about Bergen Tetzloff, who's been on this list several times, a passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown. He also caught 4 balls for almost 100 yards and another touchdown. And then Jay Harris on the defensive side with 2 big picks, and he also caught one on offense for a touchdown. Big day for those 3 and the Bobcats as they head into the playoffs.
40-14 over Huron, a team that's been playing well recently.
It really, to me, that was a huge win for Brookings because it could have been a trap game, and they came into it very focused and played some of their best ball of the year. How about Griffin Musser out of Clark Willow Lake? Speaking of playing a big game on one of the biggest stages of the year, Clark Willow Lake had a tough game in front of him, and Griffin Musser put the team on his back, rushed for almost 200 yards, couple of touchdowns, and made 8 tackles on defense.
27-13 over Bridgewater Emory Ethan.
Big win for Clark Willow Lake. Let's look at the 9-man list, and we haven't seen this guy on in a couple of weeks just because he hasn't played a huge competition here in the last few weeks, but came out big time in this first round of playoffs. Colt Beck went 9 of 12 for over 200 yards passing, also rushed for 3 touchdowns, so a total of a hand in 7 touchdowns for Colt Beck.
54-0. They get the first round victory over Great Plains Lutheran.
He looked really good in that game. We'll see how he does next week against Hanson. How about Tremere Hanson? He's been big time all season long. Came up with a big running game, 178 yards on the ground. Also threw a passing touchdown in that game. So St. Mary's tuning up as they go deeper into the playoffs.
It was a 50-point win over Irene Wakanda, 62-12. And as you said, Tremere Hanson showing the versatility.
And they'll need it going forward. How about Caleb Richmond? We've talked a lot about Moshe Richmond, but Caleb, the quarterback, went for 200 yards passing, 100 on the ground, and a total of a hand in 7 touchdowns. Big day for Caleb Richmond.
Absolutely a big win over Lemon McIntosh, 50-20.
And then Eston Schlemgen, we mentioned him, but Hanson hasn't had to go to the air very much this year. They show that they can do it. 239 yards through the air with 4 touchdowns for Hanson as they move on in the playoffs.
27-26, that nail-biter over TDA ACDC.
And then we talked about Dupree and their 400-yard rushing game. Well, a lot of that due to Braden Terveen Smith, 336 yards on the ground. He was going up against Harding County, a team that usually chews up the clock and finds a way to grind out 300 or 400 yards on the ground. Well, he gave it right back to him in a big way with 4 touchdowns.
50-28 Dupree over Harding County Bison. That was the big upset in the playoffs this past week.
That was huge. But the game ball has to go to a regular season. This is the last week of giving out the game ball, so we didn't count the playoff games. But we went to a kid who set a record, a school record, for rushing yards at Yankton. That's saying something. It was Evan Sirk. From beginning to end, dominated this football game, 255 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns. And as you'll see by the highlights here, they were hard-fought runs throughout the game, a lot of big runs for the kid. But he did a great job of powering his team past Mitchell.
It's rare when you see an 80 spot in high school football, 80-14 in the final. Yankton over Mitchell, a statement victory to end the regular season for the Bucks, who are the number 1 seed.
That's my favorite one right there. About 5 or 6 kernels that he dodges through and finds a way to get to the corner of the end zone. This next run is the one that set him for the school record for yards, 255 and 6 touchdowns for Evan Sirk. So congratulations. He's definitely a guy who looks like one of the best in the state.
Because he was blazing by all those defenders, would you say he popped the kernels?
Yeah, I was gonna, but I saved that for you. I was gonna try to set you up on that, but you don't need to be set up.
Exactly. But Evan Sirk, you get the last regular season game ball of the season. It is presented by our friends at Game One. We'll be back after this, after a word from Game One. Thanks again to Game One, as always, all season long for sponsoring the game ball. We've talked a lot about the Dupree Harding County Bison upset, but there were multiple upsets in these first rounds of the playoffs, and you talked all about it with Mr. Deal, Ryan Deal.
Yeah, Ryan Deal was at one of those upsets as Mobridge Pollock played McCook Central Montrose. He'll talk to us about that, and then the story he wrote up on what Dupree did, and we'll find out why they had fireworks set off in their name as we talk to Ryan Deal. Another week, another chat with Ryan Deal, and this week we've got a lot to talk about. breaking down some of the games that he saw and some of the games that he's looking forward to seeing. First of all, Ryan, how are you doing? Everything going well?
Doing good, doing good. Right, reaching towards the end of October, but obviously, you and I know that means high school playoffs are obviously in full gear, and it's seems like the season goes fast, but it's fun once we get to this point of the season and everything.
It is for sure. And you've gotten your eyes on Mobridge a couple of times this year, including last week. And what did you think of that Mobridge McCook Central Montrose game?
Yeah, going into that, you see the 8 versus 9, and automatically you're hoping it's going to be a good game, and it certainly was. Mobridge won that game 36-18. And in the first half, they were only up by a touchdown, and I think they were probably a little bit disappointed with that because they were hurting themselves with penalties and whatnot. But once they settled in that third quarter, that was especially big for them. Got some turnovers, got some interceptions. Got a block punt there right at the end of the first half that kind of gave them some momentum, obviously. So Mobridge with a nice win on the road. Once things kind of got rolling for them, they definitely showed what they were capable of. Got some good athletes across the field and everything, and now they got a tough one against Sioux Valley, number 1 seed. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes for those guys. A couple teams not familiar with each other, but that's what it's all about whenever you get to this point of the season when teams, different parts of the state, face off. So good for Mobridge Paula getting that win on the road, but now face another tough one going up to Volga to play the Cossacks.
You also did a write-up after Dupree got an upset victory over Hardin County Bison. And if you haven't had a chance, go check that out. But tell us a little bit about what you found out about Dupree after that big win.
Yep, Dupree, first time they've beaten Hardin County Bison since 1987, and what a time to do it. First round of the playoffs. Little Memorial Conference opponents, face off, obviously, every year. And like I said, first time since 87. So obviously Hardin County Bison has had their number for a number of years. But, they played here not too long ago at the end of the regular season, 26-14 game. And I talked to the coach after they beat them in the playoffs, and he said, they just shot themselves in the foot with some turnovers inside the red zone. And so they felt confident going into that game facing Hardin County Bison, and pulled off the win 50-28. I asked the coach and Cody Eaton and one of their players, Braden Tervain Smith, were you surprised at the outcome? And they were definitely surprised about beating them by 22. They definitely had confidence going into the game, but they did not anticipate beating them that bad. So good for Dupree cutting off that win in that situation. And like we were talking earlier, they lit off fireworks coming back into Dupree after the game. They were obviously celebrating and relishing that win and everything. So good for the Tigers picking up that victory.
That's really cool. Now Dupree heads to Wolsey Wessington for a great 9A matchup. Speaking of matchups coming up this Thursday, we've got one in 9-man and one in 11-man that we want to talk about. Let's start with 11-man. What game are you looking forward to in 11-man football?
It's fun. Rematches are fun, and we're gonna have a rematch in 11B. We're gonna keep an eye on here. St. Thomas More, Mount Vernon Plank. They played early in the year, 36-30. Mount Vernon won that game, but now here they are going to face off again. And St. Thomas More has not lost since that game. And defensively, they've just kind of kicked it up another gear. They've only given up 19 points since they've lost that game. So certainly a team that's playing well here down the stretch, facing off against MVP, who's obviously well coached. This fundamentally a sound football team. So that'll definitely be a fun one to cover and keep an eye on.
How about in the 9-man ranks? A lot of good stuff going on across the state. What do you have your eyes on?
Another East River versus West River matchup out in Hill City. 4 seed Hill City hosting number 5 seed Freeman Marion Freeman Academy. So you hope you look at the seeds that obviously hopefully that leads itself into a good game. A couple good quarterbacks on both sides. Hill City's Devin Bueller, and the Phoenix are led by Riley Cheddar. So I think that'll be a fun one to see how that plays out. And you got some good athletes on both sides of the field and everything. And again, 2 teams not familiar with each other, so that always adds a fun element to see how it plays out. So that'll certainly be a 9-man game I'm going to be keeping an eye on.
A lot of 9-man teams not used to taking long trips like that. That'll be quite a trip for Freeman Marion Freeman Academy taking on Hill City Ryan Deal, as always, great to check in with you. I am keeping my eyes peeled to 605sports.com for more stuff that you put out, and it's always good to chat once a week on The Real Deal.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you later, Jason.
Thanks as always to Mr. Deal for his time each and every week. And yeah, Hill City, Freeman, Marion, Freeman Academy. That's going to be one of the many, many interesting games.
I can't wait to break that down a little bit. And like he said in that piece, two really special quarterbacks going at it. And those are the kind of guys who can lead your team not only to the Dome, but to a Dome victory if you get the right roles.
Absolutely. All right. Wheel of Justice time. And hey, we're all in the quarterfinals now, so let's give her a spin, shall we? Here we go. Ooh, 9B.
So just go straight bottom up.
Bottom up. Yep, 9B, and we'll move all the way up. Sorry, let's start in 9B and talk about what happened within Class 9B. The big upset, which you called last week and I did not. 10-7, Coleman Egan over Hitchcock Tulare, 52-12. And look at these beautiful graphics, by the way. Got the logos right, you got the scores right. It looks awesome.
Thank you for checking.
Credit to Jason Andera
and thank you for checking, Dave.
Beautiful graphics.
Hopefully we have no way bays this week.
No way bays, no wabays, no bays of any kind.
That's right.
But yeah, Coleman Egan over not over Fulton. They're going to face Fulton over Hitchcock Tulare, 52-12. Technically the only upset in the first round of 9B.
Yeah, but that's a team I think that's on a little bit of a mission right now is Coleman Egan. And when we get into talking about these matchups, I think that's a team that nobody wants to face right now because they have got a lot of potential. They can throw the ball a little bit, and it's a team that has good balance. So that's going to be an interesting one against Fulton area.
Absolutely. And then you look at the other scores, nothing really close. Avon 67-6 over Jones County. Canastota, no problem with ORR. Corsica Stickney over Harriet Selby. Sully Buttes over Arlington.
Not many close ones.
Yeah, Fulton over Sunshine Bible Academy. DRSM over Irene Wakanda. We talked about Tremere Hansen a little bit earlier. Kadoka 54-12 over Burke. I guess, looking at it from this perspective, looking at these quarterfinal matchups, probably the one that seems most intriguing on paper is Avon and Canastota.
Yeah, I agree. I think Canastota's that's still a team that I get differing opinions on. Some people kind of look at their record and say, well, they're maybe a little overrated, but then I hear other people say, watch out for Canastota. They might be a little bit underrated. So this is their time. If they want to shine, they're going to have to do it against the best team in this class or the team that's been playing the best all season long. That's going to be a tough opponent for anybody to play Avon in the quarterfinals. But Canastota, I think, will make it interesting.
Absolutely they will. And we should also point out, by the way, not just in 9B, but across all the 9-man classes, there are obviously 4 quarterfinals, 12 games this Thursday in 9-man football. All the matchups, none of these teams met in the regular season. These are all new teams that they have to scout and look out for. So there's not a whole lot to go on in terms of looking, except for maybe common opponents. There are 2 between Canastota and Avon. That's Coleman Egan and Sioux Falls Lutheran. Coleman Egan was a close game for Canastota. And remember, Avon, that first game of the season, that was a bit of a shootout. Avon kind of had to get all 60 of those points.
Yeah, I think they had 4 return touchdowns in that game or something close to that. Avon did. So it kind of got out of hand. But I think that those 2 teams, Coleman Egan and Avon, were a little closer than the score indicated. And then when Canastota played Coleman Egan, we saw those 2 teams were pretty close too. So if that's any indication, even though it was a couple of months ago for both teams, we could have a decent game here between Avon and Canastota.
We absolutely could. The 4-5 Corsica Stickney, Sully Buttes didn't meet in the regular season. They have 4 common opponents this season: Hitchcock Tulare, Sunshine Bible Academy, Burke, Harriet Selby area. They won all those games, and the point differential, Sully Buttes plus 172, Corsica Stickney plus 163. So they beat each of these teams, their common opponents, in similar fashion. This is going to be a close contest.
This is going to be a close contest. If Sully Buttes has 100% Gavin Barber, which they haven't had most of the season, I might have them be the favorites here. But Corsica Stickney has got their own load to deal with Waylon Bull, who's been unbelievable. I think it's 2 really good teams going at it. This is going to be, in my opinion, the closest game of the first round. of the quarterfinals in 9B.
And then your other matchups, the one upset, Coleman Egan, they face Faulkton area. One common opponent, Hitchcock Tulare. They each blew Hitchcock Tulare out. Didn't meet in the regular season. Coleman Egan obviously riding the high, but Faulkton has been about as solid as any 9B team toward the end of the regular season.
They have, and they've played a really tough schedule, outside of 9B that has made them look tough to beat, but there we go. We get back on. But I'll tell you what, nobody's taking them lightly. Nobody's taking either one of these two teams lightly. And Coleman Egan and Faulkton area, when you're looking for teams that could play as well against Avon as anybody, I think those two teams go right to the top of the list in 9B.
And speaking of that blank slate you saw with that Google search page, Kadoka area and Del Rapids St. Mary's didn't meet in the regular season.
Right.
No common opponents. We know DRSM has been excellent defensively as of late, but Kadoka's just been one of those sneaky teams. They played a lot of 9AA competition this year.
They've played Wall and Phillip, two good teams that have been ranked most of the year in 9A, and then Hill City, another team in 9AA that's been really good. And it's a team that can run the football. And when we line up Del St. Mary, who's doesn't probably have as much depth and maybe as much size as Kadoka, that could be really interesting. I think St. Mary's probably has more playmakers, but Kadoka has a couple of playmakers, and those guys could make a difference. Carson Eisenbraun, the sophomore quarterback, has been efficient passing it, but he's been great running the ball as well. And then you add Gus Stout. He's been their main guy running the football this year. It's gonna be a really good game, and when we get to the picks, I might have a surprise for you.
All right. You want to just get to the picks
Let's
now?
get to the picks.
All right. Let's just go down the line. Avon and Canastota. I'll go Avon.
I think we both go Avon there. I think a couple touchdowns better.
Sully Buttes, Corsica Stickney.
This is one I kind of went back and forth a few times. I did end up going with Corsica Stickney. I could easily see this game go either way, though.
I'm going to go Sully Buttes. I mean, it's not technically an upset. I mean, it's 5-4, but Sully Buttes had the better regular season. The common opponents, they were a little bit better. I just like the way they're playing right now.
Okay.
Coleman, Egan, and Faulkton.
I'm going to stick with Faulkton area. I think I would have picked Coleman Egan to upset a lot of these 9B teams, but not Faulkton area. I think they're a really good team.
Yeah, I agree. I think Faulkton, as I mentioned earlier, is probably playing the best right now toward the end of the season as any 9B team. And then Kadoka versus Del Rapids St. Mary.
I don't think a lot of people believe in the Kadoka area Cougars, but I do. Mm-hmm. I think Kadoka area is a team that could upset St. Mary's. St. Mary's youth, and I think the size will show its difference right here. Not that they're incredibly different in their size, but I think Kadoka area does a better job on the lines and can move some people. That will be the first game played on Thursday. It'll be an afternoon game, a 3:00 afternoon game. So we'll see if I go 0-1 right off the bat or not, but I'm going to take the Cougars.
I just think Del Rapids St. Mary has the better playmakers and the better overall defense. So we're actually split 2-2 on these. We agree on Avon and Faulkton, and then we differ. You have Corsica Stickney, I have Sully Buttes.
All right, that'll make it interesting.
And I have DRSM, and you have Kadoka.
I might be digging a hole here. We'll see. We'll see.
Or I might be digging a hole. You never know.
I don't know.
All right, moving on up, like the Jeffersons. Look that up, kids. It's a really old school reference. To 9A. So looking at 9A, we obviously talked about Dupree and Harding County Bison as the 12-5 upset, but not to toot my own horn, I did call the other upset, quote-unquote, Castlewood over Alcester Hudson, 22-18, maybe a little more low scoring than we thought it would be.
I thought, yeah, exactly. What I was just going to say is the biggest upset is there was only 40 points scored in that game. Total. I thought we were going to have a lot more on the scoreboard, but hey, all the credit goes to Castlewood. They played a great game in that one.
Absolutely, they did. 22-18. You see, Wall had no problem with Chester, 52-0. Wolsey Westington, 50-20 over Lemon McIntosh. The Dupree upset we talked about. Howard, no issue with Timberlake. Sorry to Ryan Deal's quote-unquote upset pick of the Fighting Tucker Crafts, 60-6.
He forgot to put the LOL emoji in there.
He did. Ipswich over Esteline Hendricks, 44-12. Warner 49-6. Phillip over Centerville. We thought Centerville with their offense
we both had that one wrong.
Pull that upset, but Phillip was able to prove us wrong, 44-30. So again, the only upsets, quote unquote, were number 12 Dupree and number 9 Castlewood. Anything else stick out from that first round of 9A games?
Just that we both got that Phillip game wrong, and this goes back to, I think there's kind of an old West River bias that we continue to hold on to.
Is that you
get an East River team is going to go over West and win. Not necessarily so. It has evened out a lot more, especially in the 9-man rank. So, hey, congratulations to Phillip. That was a huge win for them. And Centerville had a good run, but just couldn't play defense well enough.
A lot of interesting matchups here in the quarterfinals. Let's take a look at them from the top down. Castlewood as the 9 seed. They are going to play the number 1 seed Wall. As again, like all the 9-man games, did not meet in the regular season. Their one common opponent is Chester, the one that Wall just shut out 52-0. Castlewood lost to Chester earlier this regular season 7-0.
Well, what I always think about is when Wall and Lex Heathershaw were kind of evolving this program at Wall in 2017 and 2018, 2 big years for Wall as they continued to get better and better and go deeper into the playoffs. They played Castlewood both years in the playoffs, lost in 17. They got the win in 18. That was a huge momentous win for this program at Wall. So a little bit of a rivalry is built up between these two schools over the years playing in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Wall undefeated at 9-0. Castlewood coming in at 6-3 after the win in the first round over Alcester Hudson. And then the big one, Dupree against Wolsey Wessington. Again, did not meet in the regular season. Their one common opponent, Levin McIntosh, who Wolsey Wessington just defeated in the postseason. We've talked about Wolsey Wessington and their offense and their ability to keep up. This is going to be another tough challenge for Dupree, but they've already passed one of those challenges.
They have, and the way they ran the ball against a team that's usually good at stopping the run, I mean, that gets your ears up if you're Wolsey Wessington. They are going to be ready for this game. They're definitely not looking past Dupree. But on the other hand, Wolsey Wessington has a lot of different players, and just the one loss on the year to Parkston, that was a pretty close game. So Wolsey Wessington may be a little underrated as the 4 seed. Maybe they're playing more like a number 1 or 2 seed.
Absolutely they are. And then who will have the eye of the tiger between Ipswich and Howard? It is the battle of the Tigers. 2 common opponents, Esteline Hendricks and Timberlake, both blowout victories for both sides. Ipswich obviously playing well right now, but Howard, who quote-unquote fell to the number 2 seed after being number 1 in the media poll, which again has no bearing on the seeds, but they were kind of the consistent number 1 in 9A all season. A tough matchup for Howard.
Yeah, Ipswich is definitely one of these teams that has gotten better throughout the year. Lost the opener and have come back and played really well. They've been a tough team to take out, but Howard, I mean, that's a team that, last season took care of Ipswich, and there's a lot of similarities from last season to this season on both those 2 teams. So I really like Howard in this one.
9-0 versus 7-2. It's the same thing in the 6-3 matchup. Phillip 7-2 against undefeated Warner. Warner, we kind of made fun of it at the beginning of the year where I picked them number 1 in my preseason bowl because they were the defending champions, even though they may not have had the same amount of depth. But look at them. They're 9-0. They're one of 3 undefeateds in this class, almost kind of quietly in these postseasons.
Josiah Baum has done a great job of kind of taking the mantle on this team. Bakesburg doing a good job at quarterback, filling in for Hunter Kramer, who has lifted that program for the last 3 seasons. So yes, this Warner team is not to be slept on, that's for sure. But they get Phillip, a team that put up some points last week. We'll see if they can put up some points against a much tougher defense in Warner.
And no common opponents, so it'll be interesting to see just those matchups within the matchup that you talked about weeks ago. Phillip's offense against Warner's defense.
Yeah, these no common opponent, or no previous games against each other, really does keep you guessing in these 9-man games, and no wonder we had a couple different in 9B, and we'll see if we have a few different in 9A as well.
All right, what are your picks for these 9A quarterfinals?
Well, I'm not going to go totally off the board here. I'm going to take Wall in this one. I think they're a better team than Castlewood, although I think this one might be closer than people think.
I am also going to take Wall. I just think the depth is there, and I think Castlewood is going to need to put up a lot more points in order to keep up with Wall.
Yeah, both got Wall in that one.
Dupree against Wolsey Wessington. Can Dupree notch a second straight upset?
That's asking a lot. This Wolsey Wessington team is really good, and that's a tough draw for them. After getting that win in the first round, I think Wolsey Wessington probably has too many weapons on the outside. They've got some big strength up the middle, too. They're going to be able to stop the run better than most teams.
Yeah, Dupree, it's a nice story. Congrats to them. Again, it's asking a lot. Not that they can't do it, but I just think the offensive firepower in a different way from Wolsey Wessington will be the difference. So we're both taking them there. Ipswich and Howard in the Battle of the Tigers.
Yeah, this one, I think we all believe that Howard is probably has more talent on the field. Ipswich has had a great season, but for Ipswich to go on the road, play in Howard, it's just going to be too big of an ask. I got the Howard Tigers.
I also got Howard. I just think the depth and the multiple different ways that they can produce on offense is going to end up being the big difference. Phillip and Warner.
Yeah, Warner, again, this is a team that's probably not gotten enough recognition, even though they're undefeated in the state champions from last year. But I think they're too good for this Phillip team.
I do as well. So it's kind of boring, but we're both going chalk here. I just don't see.
It was fun while it lasted.
It was fun while it lasted. We might have some differences elsewhere, but yeah, I just think with all these matchups, it's just going to be really tough for all these underdogs in 9A.
Yep, 9A, it will be really good.